house and say, sir, we're watching out for your credit, and we noticed that you always pay your credit card on time, but recently you didn't pay this credit card bill. Did you recently move? Yes, we did. Oh, well, we probably sent the bill to the wrong address. To prevent you from having a bad credit, we need to take payment over the phone. Well, some of those are legit, some of those are scams, because what they do is if you give them your check number over the phone, they can now use that to make withdrawals from your account. So what do I always say? Listen, I'm in the other room and I have to get my checkbook. Give me your direct line and I'll call you back. Now what can I do? I can go in and check that that phone number is a legitimate credit card company. I could call the general number, make sure it really is Master, Visa, or American Express, and by me not giving them data over the same line it's requested, I'm now reducing my exposure of being impacted by social engineering. So that's what I train a lot of my clients, that if somebody ever calls up and says, hey, we need you to change our password, I always go in and say fine, but I'll give you the new password in your voicemail, or I'll email it to your boss. By sending it over a different channel, you're now reducing your risk. Question?
Yeah, I was going to ask, does your wife ever try to install extra applications on the browser?
And then they ask why it wouldn't work, or why like a flash doesn't work or something.
Yeah, excellent question. The question was, what if somebody in that browser example tries to go in and install additional components or other factors and it won't work? You're right, so what do I do there is, and this seems counterintuitive, but I go in and all the possible plugins or things she should need, I put them in ahead of time. So now it's sort of fully loaded. But the other benefit about that is, and once again, this is where the wife example breaks down, because my wife can do whatever she wants, but your average employee, you don't necessarily want them to install or make modifications or do things. So now you give them the browser the way it should be configured to perform job functions, and now if they try to install or do other stuff, it's not going to work. And here's the million-dollar question. When they go in to try to install new components and it doesn't work and they call up the help desk and say, I'm trying to install this and it doesn't work, here's what you have the help desk say. What is the business function or the business job you're trying to accomplish? Oh, well, I'm trying to go to ESPN. That's fine. You're going to ESPN.com to find out the score of last night's game. But where's the business job? If I'm stopping you from performing your job, we will fix it. But if we're stopping you from doing things that can harm the company, then that's not our problem. Or, so you're not the bad person, say, just get your supervisor and your executive's approval to get that installed, and we'd be happy to take care of that. So that's sort of a double win by working that way.
Do you want your wife to know that she's on a virtual machine? Do you want your employees to know that they're on a virtual machine?
The question is, whether you care whether your employees know they're in a virtual machine or not. At the end of the day, if it's configured correctly, I don't see the benefit in telling them because it's transparent. But even if they knew, it doesn't have any negative side effect. If they can go in, run their applications, do what they're supposed to, and it's working fine, it doesn't really matter how it's set up. And to me, that's really a quality of a security professional of the future that's going to be successful. 15 or 20 years ago, a lot of security people, how were they trained? To always say no. Can we do that? No. Is it secure? No. Should you do it? No. But what you quickly find out is, if somebody asks you a question and you say no, it means they're going to do it anyway. They're just not going to ask you anymore. One of the things I want to write a book on is, because I swear it's true, I haven't found an exception, but everything you need to know about network security you can learn from a 5-year-old. If your 5-year-old comes up and asks you for a cookie at 4 in the afternoon and you say no, what are they going to do? They're going to find your wife, somebody else in the house, and say, can I have a cookie? And then you come downstairs and they're eating a cookie, and you say, why'd you have a cookie? Mommy said okay. Well, did Mommy know that Daddy just said no 20 minutes ago? And then you see the long look on the face. So the whole trick is, what I do now is, if my 5-year-old asks for a cookie, I say, well, why do you want a cookie? It's probably because she's either bored or she's hungry. If she's bored, then let's go play the Wii, which, by the way, I'm determined to beat my children at. We got it for Christmas, and we're playing on it, and my wife walks up and says, hon, you don't have to let them win every game. And I'm like, fine, if you want to think I'm letting them win, that's okay. But they're kicking my butt. I'm trying my hardest. Right? And they're winning. So let's either play the Wii, or if you're really hungry, you would take a banana or something more healthy as an option. So with security, you don't say no, you say yes in a creative manner. And that's really what that virtual machine is. You're going in and saying, fine, you want to do this, but here's the secure way of accomplishing it. Then worms is another one. If you have a traditional web server on your DMZ, should it be sending inbound SYN packets? Yes, because it's a client-server architecture. The clients are on the internet. This is a server. They send SYN, you send SYNAC and ACT, a three-way handshake for TCP/IP. That works fine. Should your web server be sending outbound SYN packets by itself? No. Unless it's doing updates or something else, but a traditional normal web server should be receiving SYN and sending SYNAC, but it should never be sending outbound SYN. When was the last time you put a sniffer on your DMZ and look for outbound SYN packets? I do this even today when I do pen tests and security assessments, and I still find organizations that are spending thousands of outbound SYN packets, which is indicative of Code Red and NIMDA from 8 and 9 years ago. That means you have sites that were infected for 9 years and nobody ever bothered to look. Nobody ever bothered to see that there was a problem or an issue. So go in and start using some devices like sniffers or others to be able to see what the problems and issues are. So to the future, data loss prevention, or this whole space of DLP, I think it's the right idea. But I think right now, once again, there's so much hype around it, it's sort of a painkiller security thing. Because the key thing with data loss prevention is it really effectively reducing the risk of your data? Or is it just making you feel good that, hey, we deployed something on our network? So I think once again, you can't ever make a general statement about the space, but I still think the DLP space has sort of some forward momentum to go to really become a mature technology. Wireless. Whatever happened with wireless? 3 or 4 years ago, that was the hot thing. There were books everywhere. There were articles everywhere. Everyone's talking about wireless, 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 wireless. And I do a lot of teaching for SANS. And at SANS, we still teach the wireless course and go through a lot of the methods for securing it. The problem is many organizations still have unsecured, open, vulnerable wireless networks, but it's not the cool thing anymore. So nobody focuses on it. But wireless is the same issue it was 3 or 4 years ago, so we need to go in and make sure we're protecting those wireless systems. Patching, as I talked about, is a reactive measure, so I think there needs to be significant research in going in and being able to do self-healing or reduce those vulnerabilities beforehand, because if you're relying on the operating system vendor or the software vendor to identify a vulnerability, come up with a fix, test it, and go out there, you're 3 weeks behind the curve. You're 3 weeks behind the curve from when attackers know about vulnerability before you do. In summary, it's one of those things where you can cut corners and you can speed. If I speed, can you guarantee me that I'm going to get a ticket today? No. I might get lucky today or tomorrow, but I can tell you if you constantly speed over the course of the next 20 years, the chances of you getting a ticket are extremely high. So you can cut corners in security, and you might not get broken into today or tomorrow, but the chances over the next 5 or 10 years is you will. And what I found is sort of the 4 ways that you don't cut corners, and sort of the 4 what I call Eric's general principles of security is you got to know your systems. If you don't know what it is that you're trying to secure, how are you ever going to secure it? Great experiment. Many people say, oh, my laptop or my home computer is secure. Can you tell me without looking at that system what ports and what services are running on that laptop? If you don't, and ports and services are the way that people breaks in, how do you know you're secure, and how do you know if you've been broken into? You don't. You have to know what you're trying to secure. Only give someone the least amount of access you need to do their job. Multiple levels of protection. One of my favorite t-shirts, but it's a little raggedy now so I don't wear it anymore, but if you remember Coors Light, it's a long, thin silver can, and their whole marketing campaign was the silver bullet. It won't slow you down. So one of my favorite t-shirts, it has a can of Coors Light, the silver bullet. It says, when it comes to network security, this is the only silver bullet. And one of the jokes I always like to say is, if you're not going to go in and do defense in depth, if you drink a lot of the silver bullets, at least you'll feel better about the problem. All right, so that's your